City Hall, designed by Michael R. Keller, set to be published by Visible Hand Games. As we begin setting up our game of City Hall, let's take a look at the geography of the game board. There are 3 different areas where players will build. We'll get into the details of how to build in a few moments. Next to Queens is the population track. Your placement on the population track is connected to your score at the end of the game. Below Brooklyn is the approval track, which is also connected to your score. Each player will have a pawn on this track, and the game itself will have a star. The approval track is also the signal for the game's end. The bottom of the board contains the spaces for many of the decks you'll be using, and spots for the 7 offices players will be choosing to activate. We will talk about activating and executing offices in more detail shortly. First, let's get the cards in place. Money is available in 3 denominations: 1s, 5s, and 10s. There are 2 denominations of influence. The dark green cards are land cards and need to be shuffled. Place the money cards in the marked spaces near the tax assessor. The land cards are placed near the surveyor. The influence cards are placed by the lobbyist. Place the endorsement cards to the side. These are achievements players will earn at the end of the game. Add a star to the approval track in the appropriate space for the number of players in your game. Each player will take 1 color of meeple, 3 influence, and $10. Players can take their money in any combination, 1s, 5s, or 10s. Money and influence share card backs and are hidden information. Give each player 1 of each building card: housing, offices, and factories. Add the 4 park cards to the remaining building cards. Shuffle all the permit cards together, the buildings and the parks. Place this permit deck in the space near the zoning board. Place 1 meeple for each player on the approval track's 1 space. Each player places a meeple on the 1 space of the population track. Determine turn order by a random method of your choosing. The last player in turn order takes 1 extra influence. Players will now draft 2 free land spaces. Start by revealing 3 land cards. Place these land cards over their corresponding locations. Beginning with the first player, you will choose a land space, place 1 of your meeples, and remove the land card. The remaining land cards each receive a subsidy of $5 from the bank. A new land card is revealed and placed. The next player repeats the process, placing their pawn, removing the land card, distributing new subsidies, and drawing a new land card. Players choosing land spaces with money add that money to their hands. New subsidies happen after each selection and can add up on a land card during this process. Players will choose 2 land spaces in each 3 or 4 player game. In a 2-player game, each opponent will choose 3 land spaces. When choosing land and building permits, which we'll do in the next phase, it is important to consider adjacency and its effect on star values. We will speak in depth on adjacency when we calculate star values in a few moments. After the last player chooses their final land space, give subsidies, but do not add new land. Each player has a housing, office, and factory permit. They will choose 1 permit to build on 1 of their land spaces, 1 to discard, and 1 to keep. Place discarded permits on the bottom of the permit deck. Each player will build 1 permit in turn order during this step. Remember to shuffle the permit deck once each player has returned one permit. Each player should still have one permit in their hand, and it should be kept secret from the other players. The star values of permits are determined by placement and adjacency. Each building has a star value printed on it. This is the maximum number of stars buildings can have on them during the game. Buildings earn stars by being adjacent to other permits. A permit is considered adjacent to any permit on lands connected to it in the same region or across a bridge. Queens 5 is adjacent to Queens 1 and Queens 6. Diagonal land is also adjacent, so Queens 2 is adjacent to Queens 5. Bridges create adjacency. There are 4 bridges. Since there is a bridge connecting the two, Queens 5 is also adjacent to Manhattan 2. Queens 5 is not adjacent to Manhattan 1, Manhattan 3, or Brooklyn 1. Buildings have different effects on other buildings. Houses gain 1 star per office and park, and 2 stars for other houses. A house loses a star if it is adjacent to a factory. An office gains 1 star if it is near another office, a house, or a park. Factories have no effect on offices. Factories gain a star being next to an office or a park, but are not affected by houses. Parks are permits, but not buildings. They can't have stars, but do grant stars to adjacent buildings. When you build a park, you gain 1 approval level for each set of 2 buildings adjacent to them. Once built, every new adjacent building gains the park's owner 1 approval level. We will now evaluate the star values of the permits that have already been built in our example. Each permit built in Manhattan automatically receives 1 star. This is why Manhattan land cards have a star printed on them. Each house receives 2 stars for each house they are adjacent to. In this example, both houses receive 2 stars. It is now time to begin the game. Starting with the first player, each player will choose to activate one of the 7 offices. These offices are clearly marked on the board and are accompanied by the gameplay elements they interact with. A player will activate a role by placing a meeple on that office. Once that office has been activated, each other player, in clockwise order from that player, has a chance to bid influence or pass. When a player bids, they may match or exceed the current high bid. The player who wins the bid will be the one to execute that office, gaining the benefits of any actions. The player who activated the office gets the final bid and can accept the highest bid, taking that influence from the opponent who made the bid. That player would get to execute the office. The activating player may choose to execute the role themselves by paying the high bid of influence to the bank. If there are tie bids, the activating player chooses who wins the bid from among the tied players. It is possible for a player to execute multiple roles each round, or for a player to not execute any role. We will now describe the offices in the order printed on the board. The tax assessor is the primary way to get more money. Executing the office of tax assessor allows a player to gain money equal to their number on the population track, plus $3 for each office and $7 for each factory they have built. In this example, blue is on the 3 space of the population track, but only has housing built. He would earn $3. Blue is at the 2 space of the approval track, so he can triple his taxes and make $9. But he has to move back 1 space on the approval track. A player on the 1 space of the approval track is unable to triple their taxes, but could double them without the penalty of moving back a space. The surveyor allows a player to purchase a plot of land. Upon activating the surveyor, the activating player may choose to spend 1 influence and search the land deck to reveal a land card of their choice, or they may simply reveal the top card of the land deck. Place that card on the corresponding board space before bidding begins. After the bidding, the player who executes the office may purchase any of the land spaces with revealed land cards for $20. Remember to subsidize the remaining land cards that were not purchased, even if no land was purchased. A player may purchase land with a subsidy on it already. That subsidy is added to their cash immediately. Use this money to pay for the land card it was on, effectively decreasing the cost to you. Discard the land card you have purchased. You may only purchase one land on a turn. The campaign manager is your primary way to increase your approval rating. Executing the office earns 1 approval rating. For $10, you may instead buy 2 approval ratings. For $30, you may instead buy 3 approval ratings. The lobbyist allows you to buy and sell influence. When you execute the lobbyist action, you will automatically gain influence equal to your rating on the approval track. You may buy more influence at $10 per influence. You may sell influence at the rate of $7 for each 1 influence card sold. The zoning board allows a player to build on any empty land they already own. Upon activating the zoning board, reveal the top 3 permits from the permit deck. A player who executes the zoning board action may take 2 actions. Available actions include drawing one of the revealed permits into their hand and building a permit from their hand. A player may draw 1 permit and build 1 permit. The played permit can be the permit just drawn, as in this example. Without drawing any permits, a player may build 2 permits already in their hand. A player may draw 2 of the revealed permits into their hand and build no permits. For each permit built, you will move the star on the approval track up 1 level. If 1 permit was built, move the star up 1 level. If 2 permits were built, move the star up 2 levels. Adjust the star tokens of the newly placed permits and any permits adjacent to them to reflect any changes in star rating for those permits. Finally, place any of the 3 revealed permits which were not taken underneath the permit deck. Do not reshuffle. The Deputy Mayor office allows a player to take the first position in turn order. The player executing this office moves their meeple to the first slot in turn order. All other players slide back in the same relative order to each other. This role has its effect at the end of a round, before the next round. It does not alter order in the current round. The Health Commissioner is the only office that affects all players. The player who executes the Health Commissioner may double their star value or add 3 to it. The player with the highest star value receives 4 points on the population track. The player with the second highest star value receives 2 points on the population track. The player with the third highest star value receives only 1 point on the population track. In the case of a tie, the players at the tied level each receive the population point due, but the next level down is removed. Each player will total up their star values. In this example, the Black Meeple wins the office and adds 3 to his star value of 1, giving him the lead position and 4 population points. We have a tie for second place, so the White Meeple, which has no star value, receives no population points this round. After all players have activated an office, and those offices have been executed, add 1 influence to each office that was not activated in that round. Players will then take their meeples back, and a new round will begin. When the star, or any player's meeple, has reached the final space on the approval track, the game enters one final round. All offices will be activated and executed in this round. The first player chooses a new role to activate, and then play continues in turn order. Once all players have activated one office, starting with the first player, players will in turn activate another office. After all 7 offices have been activated, the Health Commissioner will be activated one more time. No one will get the bonus of the office this time. Once the second Health Commissioner has occurred in the final round, it's time to hold the election. Each player's score is the number of their space on the population track, multiplied by their level on the approval track. Players will then earn endorsements. These are the yellow cards you set aside during setup. Each endorsement a player earns is worth 10 votes. The player with the highest score is named Mayor of New York. City Hall is available on Kickstarter.com until November 30th. Please consider supporting this game.